everybody. Greetings. It's Peter Hecht coming to you live from the actual Magna Legal Services headquarters. That's right. I'm coming to you live from 1635 Market Street in Philadelphia. We are up and running and ready to go. Social distancing in effect. I've got my mask. Everybody's staying 6 feet apart. I wanted to give you a quick introduction to our conference center, and we're going to then segue over to a fantastic webinar today hosted by our very own Managing Director of Jury Research, Dr. Colangelo. She's fantastic. You're going to love it. You're going to come away saying she's definitely the brains of the operations and probably the muscle too. You might be thinking, hey, what's this wall behind you? Is there graffiti in Magna Legal Services offices? Yes, there is. There is graffiti, and here are all my partners. Their initials are right there. Robert Ackerman, Markel, John Ackerman, and Peter Hecht. That's right, the Magna Legal Services founders, and we're happy to be home. This is our first week back in Philadelphia. We are very, very excited. So the webinar that we're going to be hearing about today is about what is the future of jury research. Is it here now? Did COVID-19 change the entire paradigm? We're going to find that out today. But, and this is a big but, if we were doing jury research today and it was not being done virtually, we would be working out of our war room. So let me show you that war room right now. Look at that. Our receptionist is up and running. She's protected by all kinds of social distancing countermeasures, all right, or COVID-19 countermeasures. So here we go. We're heading into a war room. If you were doing a focus group with Magna Legal Services and it was a bricks and mortar program here in Philadelphia, everybody would be huddled together in this really nice, comfortable war room. Oh my gosh, is that an attorney? That's a scary looking attorney. Yes, that's Lee Diamondstein, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, and he would be here working with you in your focus groups. But today we're going to be talking about the differences between doing things in person and virtually. So here you go. We would be able to see all the jurors in the different rooms. Really, quite an outstanding facility. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know I'm giving a little bit of I'm doing some crass marketing here, but for those of you, and I noticed that there's about 200 of you that signed up today, let me just give you some background on Magna Legal Services. Magna Legal Services is an end-to-end litigation consulting and support company. Yes, we are involved in jury research, but there's a lot more that we do. On the front end, in discovery, we are a ALM award-winning court reporting company. And guess what? We specialize in virtual depositions. That's right. You don't need to leave the comfort of your home, your dining room, your patio, your deck, the beach, wherever you want to be. You can now do your depositions without having to travel anywhere. Or you can come to my office. We're open for business. Love to have you. Medical record collection services, we're doing that today too, virtually as well. And we're having great success collecting those records. Not a problem. Quick returns on your requests. Social media surveillance, we're doing that. And let me tell you something. People are posting like mad. So social media surveillance is a big deal right now. You should be calling us. And when you think about calling us, it's 866-624-6221. Don't forget that number. Visual communications, I'm a visual guy, but you want to tell your story to the judge and jury, and trials are happening virtually now. Check it out in Texas. Think about Arizona. You can call us up and we can help you at 866-624-6221. Jury research, focus groups, mock trials, change of venue studies, witness communication training. We've got it all covered, and we just launched our very brand new Jury Confirm 2020 service. It's got all kinds of neat features, which I think you're going to hear about today from Dr. Colangelo. Now, we've got 4 fantastic guests. The first guest I want to tell you about, his name is Ted Schaer. He comes from the city of brotherly love. If you follow him on Facebook, he takes a walk every day with his wonderful dog, Max. But when he's not walking his dog, he's advocating. And this guy is a prolific trial attorney. And I'll tell you why. He's a 3-time chop for chop champion. And if you don't know what that is, he's raised about $60,000 for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, vanquishing his enemies on stage at Chop for Chop at Fundraiser Sealy by Magna Legal Services. We have Stefanie Milch, the New Yorker that now lives in Texas. We've got Christina Perrotta. She's hailing from Brooklyn today. She's very, very cool. I love you, Christina. We've got Mr. Collin Hite. He's from Virginia. And I want to tell you about these folks. They're all from some incredible companies, and they're going to introduce themselves shortly. but they here today represent themselves, and what they have to share today are their opinions and not the opinions of their companies. Me, when I speak for Magna because I am Magna. So that's my message. Welcome to the webinar. And now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Rachel, and I'll see you at the end and tell you all about how you can contact us on our toll-free number. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter. We enjoyed the tour of the office. It's great to see you back there. I look forward to being back for some in-person mock trials and focus groups soon. On today's webinar, we are going to discuss COVID-19's impact on jury research, how we've had to adapt to the virtual environment, and some of the virtual jury research tools that Magna offers, which our esteemed panelists all have experience with. So hopefully those of you that are on today's webinar are aware that Magna has seamlessly transitioned into this remote environment with remote depositions, mediations, arbitrations, and we've continued our virtual jury research programs, which we've been doing actually for over a decade. So the virtual world is not new to Magna. It's something that we've been living in for a long time. And we wanted to discuss today, now that more and more people are giving the virtual jury research a shot due to COVID-19 restrictions, wanted to talk about differences and similarities between in-person research and online tools, and some of the benefits of actually using virtual jury research as opposed to in-person options. So let me introduce our panelists today. Peter gave them a brief introduction. We have Stefanie Milch, who is a vice president at Hallmark Financial Services, now in Texas. Christina Perrotta is a senior claims technical director for Great American Custom. Collin Hite is director and associate general counsel of claims at Markel in Richmond, Virginia, my hometown. And Schaer is a shareholder with Zarwin, Baum, DeVito, Kaplan, Schaer, and Toddy. So welcome, panelists. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I want to jump right in. So we're going to start off today with our panelists sharing some of their own personal experiences with virtual research. Everyone on today's panel has experienced online research with Magna, and that includes what we call Jury Confirm, our brand new iteration of that. Jury Confirm 2020 has been out for a few months now. That is our interactive live focus group or mock trial platform, and some of you have also had experience with our Jury Evaluator case assessment surveys, two of our primary online research tools. So I'd like to start off hearing about some of your personal experiences. Which virtual service did you use, and how did it help your case? Meaning, did it help get the case resolved in settlement? Did you take it to mediation after the focus group or the survey? Did you end up going to trial? Did it help with trial strategy? So I'd like to get some of those war stories from you all initially. Collin, I'm going to pick on you first because I see you're off of mute. So Collin, let's hear from you about some of your experiences.
So I was introduced to Magna about 3 years ago, and I've used it fairly extensively to basically front load what I call the cases or the files. So when we think there's a couple of issues that may hang up the case, we use Jury Confirm and the online mechanism to test those discrete theories or issues and see how a jury reacts to them. And then we bake those results into our discovery so we can drive discovery to address them. And then we do another Jury Confirm at the end of discovery and see if the results hold or if we've been able to change the outcome with some of the discovery we were able to get. So I've used it that way, mainly in that scenario, because I think you have to get those answers up front to drive through to discovery. If you wait till after, you've kind of now stuck with the evidence, and you're just good with the results are the results. You can't really react to it at that point. So we've used it very creatively, and it has certainly given us the confidence in the cases we've done to push all the way through and get the results that really help us at the back end with our exit plan. settlement or going to trial or whatever we needed. And I've done the same with the jury evaluator when we're concerned about damages and not sure what the case could be valued at. So we've used that to also effectively help our examiners understand what some of the really complex or frankly ugly cases that have really horrific losses, what that case may be worth, because we just really have struggled at times with what certain cases are worth because of the nature of the damages.
And Collin, I'm curious, in your experience, have most of the cases that you have mocked through virtual jury research ended up settling, or have any of them gone on to a jury trial?
No, they have either settled, but for significantly less, or we've been able to get out on summary judgment based on the evidence we were able to develop post phase one of the mock. So we knew what we were driving to and knew we were in a winning seat. And we've actually been able to then get out on summary judgment by the evidence we developed through discovery, but using the mock to guide us to get there.
Great. So, and that's one of the things that we try to educate our clients on, is that jury research is not just for when you're looking 6 months or 6 weeks out from a jury trial. It can be used very effectively to actually get cases resolved, which most of them do. Ted, I see that I think you unmuted next, so I'm going to call on you. Can you share with us some of your experiences? You have tried or mock tried several of your cases with our virtual focus group platforms.
Yeah, I thought what Collin said was really spot on, particularly about pre-discovery and getting and having somebody tell you right up front what the issues are. And I've used both Jury Confirm, Jury Evaluator. I think they're awesome tools. A lot of the work that I do is I come in on the excess level. So I will either come in the middle of discovery or near the end of discovery. And the problem that I think a lot of trial lawyers and even sometimes claims professionals have is we can believe our own BS. We build a construct as to what we think the evidence is and how a jury is going to be, how they're going to react. And for me, after 33 years, I found out that it never ceases to amaze me that issues that I don't think are a big deal to me become big deals to the jury. And if they're not addressed and addressed early, they become problematic. I've been using both tools, pre-mediation, not only to unpack the issues that are important, but also on valuation. Because today with social inflation, whether COVID is going to turn it into social deflation, none of us know. But it really does give you a handle, and it gives you something to talk about with a mediator. And I'm not one that I may say at the very end that I've done this type of research. I'm never going to turn over that research to the mediator, but at least it grounds us when we hear, I'm seeing demands on wrongful death cases for $50, $80 million, and they're just so out of the norm that I can come back with that research and say, listen, we ran this case through a jury evaluator. We ran this case through a mock panel, and we did it in preparation for the mediation, and we're not seeing those numbers. And it just makes us feel that we're not crazy and we're not under-evaluating or over-evaluating. It really is and for the trial lawyer, it's a confidence builder. I mean, frankly, I'm not the money guy. The other three people on this panel, they're the ones with the wallets, and they make the decisions. But what it gives to me is visibility. I'm always afraid, no matter how hard I try to open up my blinders in a case, you're still somehow caught this way. And what these tools allow you to do is unpack issues and think about things that lay people think about and are going to raise you. And then you can address them in the courtroom. So I feel naked. I've had some clients that don't want to do any type of jury research on wrongful death or catastrophic injury cases. And I just look at them and say, why? And particularly now it's become, with the virtual stuff, very reasonable to do it in comparison. So yeah, I don't want to try a case unless I'm using some of these tools. I feel like I'm going in there very naked.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ted. Stefanie, I'm going to come to you next. You and Christina are on the claim side, so I'm curious to hear your perspectives with your experiences engaging in these virtual research exercises.
So there are two different tools that Magna has that I utilize very frequently, but usually I utilize them for two different types of businesses that I oversee. On the primary side, for transportation claims, the most frequently used tool that I use is the jury evaluator. Most of the time that I use that is after a mediation where plaintiff evaluates the case one way and we evaluate the case another way, and we're really at different ends of the spectrum, and we use a jury evaluator to give us some type of idea where this case is going to go. We use that very frequently. And I want to say we use that the most on our primary lines of business to help us gauge where this case is going to go. A lot of the venues in Texas are not very favorable, and it helps to see where that venue is evaluating this case. On the excess side, it's a little bit different. The values are much more extensive. The issues tend to be a little bit more complex. We like to use a focus group or a mock trial in those cases to have a complete workup to see, to flesh out all the issues and sometimes have a value placed on it. So, I mean, that's been very helpful. There have been times where we thought that we had a case that was a no liability case, and the jury for that particular venue came back and said we were completely wrong, and it's helped us make a decision that we need to settle this case in this venue and not take it to trial. So it's been very useful for us and very helpful in our decision-making process.
Great. I'm glad to hear that it has been helpful. We hear that from clients on the claims side all the time. And Christina, I'm going to come to you next, but I'm thinking of a specific example where we had an insurance client who had a case with what they believed was a significant amount of contributory negligence on the part of the claimant, and they were certain that they were going to get what were going to be pretty substantial damages in a burn case reduced quite a bit by a huge allocation of fault to the plaintiff. And what we saw in our jury research is that the jurors were offended that the defense would even make that argument. There was so much sympathy for what had happened in this burn injury. They couldn't believe that we would have the gall to even suggest it, and they turned on us. Not only did they not give any fault to the plaintiff, but they hit us really hard with punitive damages. So in that case, the client made a decision, we've got to get rid of this case. No way should this see a jury. And they told us later, I wish we had done this focus group earlier because we had a chance to settle the case years ago for substantially less. And had we known what a jury would think, we could have gotten rid of it. So just speaks to the importance of, when you can, doing the jury research earlier, which, as we'll hit on in a few minutes, is an option with the virtual choices because they're less expensive, and we can do them, as Collin said, sometimes multiple rounds of research in the same case for still less money than you would spend on the traditional brick and mortar. Christina, I don't want to take up any more of your time to share your experiences with virtual jury research. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just sort of along the lines of what you were saying. When we used, whether it's a full-on mock trial or just online jury research, it's all to test themes. So sometimes it's just one specific theme, which makes it perfect for something more virtual and a little less expensive. And I had a situation where it was kind of the opposite of what you were talking about. We had a case where, I'm going to tell you the story as quickly as possible. This, a 10-year-old was watching his 5-year-old brother outside of their apartment in an apartment complex. The mom was inside and not watching, and there was a pool nearby. So basically the kids got into the pool area and the 5-year-old drowned, and he was resuscitated, but now he has severe brain injuries. So we wanted to settle that case. There were some issues with the gate around the pool. It was grandfathered in by, I guess, an earlier law, but technically the spaces between the bars were too big for the law, but they were still too small to allow the 5-year-old's head through. So probably what happened was that the 10-year-old helped the 5-year-old over the fence and then started panicking when his little brother started drowning and ran away and got his mom. So we had good liability defenses, but it relied basically exclusively on us blaming the mom for not keeping an eye on her kids. We did the online mock, and we got actually we did, I guess that you get some feedback early in the online mock, and then you can see what happens after they watch the presentations, and then you get, watch them deliberate. Even, before the deliberation, everyone was kind of already blaming the mom, which was kind of put us in a position to stick to our guns at a lower number where we ultimately settled the case. So that was, we used that just for mediation, and it worked out great. And that was pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing this type of research for a long time. Many people are just sort of becoming aware or becoming a little bit more open to trying it because of COVID, because they're up until basically now, we haven't been able to gather in large places. So we have been conducting even multi-day mock trials through our virtual courtroom jury confirm platform, and have really tried to migrate that traditional experience that many of you are used to, with where we show up either at a hotel or a market research facility, everyone's together, the jurors have their clickers, and they're giving us the feedback during the presentation. That's what Christina mentioned. You get some feedback kind of in real time. We ask them polls, and then they deliberate, and that's the real heart of the feedback. All of that we've been able to migrate into these virtual settings. So that leads me to my next question for you all is, for those that have done both in-person mock trials and the virtual mock trials, what are the main differences that you've seen, and what are the similarities? Meaning, what did you feel like, I'm used to this at a traditional mock, but I got that in the virtual mock, or here is a main difference that stands out to you? Ted, go ahead.
I've done both. I've done a lot of in-person mocks. I've done a lot of virtual mocks. With an in-person mock, when you're there and you're standing there, you have an ability to use your body language. You get to see the body language of the jurors, and you can tailor yourself a little bit better. That's certainly, I think, an advantage of an in-person mock. But with a virtual mock, and I guess I'm going to throw a question back at you now, Rachel, because it's been on my mind. With so many people post-COVID that are home and who otherwise weren't home before this, folks that are now working virtually. Are we, as lawyers and claims professionals, seeing a broader and even a scope of potential jurors? Because people who otherwise wouldn't be available to us to hear these cases, are they now available? Are you seeing a difference in that with the people that are agreeing? Are you seeing a broader spectrum of people?
That's a great question. So what we're seeing really is more, it's easier and quicker for us to recruit our mock jurors because people are more accessible, certainly. We, even pre-COVID, always took a lot of strides to ensure that we were going to get you a representative and a very diverse cross-section of jurors. So we pay them pretty generously, more than others, I think, so that these are people traditionally, even pre-COVID, who would take an afternoon off of work and they would come and do our virtual focus group from home, or even a traditional focus group. So we've always gone out of our way to make sure that we're not skewing our jury pool for the virtual setting. I mean, these aren't college kids who log on from their dorm room and they're always online and they're all tech savvy. These are real people, and from everyone's experience here, I'm sure you guys remember the juror who on our virtual sessions is like, what's a web browser, and they're not tech savvy, but that's because we've gone out of our way to represent real people who would show up in the courtroom. These days it is certainly easier, meaning it takes us less time to find a group of 20 or 30 people who say, sure, I'm available to do your online research. So that's been one of the benefits, absolutely, of unfortunately the quarantining. Stefanie, I see that you took yourself off of mute. Did you have something to add?
I think that this might be the new reality. Since since COVID started, I've been doing Zoom mediations, Zoom meetings with defense counsel, Zoom arbitrations. And it does allow me to see the reactions of other people, although it's not face-to-face, it's via video. It does kind of give me some indication on what the other party is thinking, what the mediator is thinking, and have an open, honest communication with them, although it's in a different way. I have done mock trials, and although I haven't attended in person, I've watched them virtually being conducted live. But I don't think it would be much different being conducted virtually, other than it being more efficient and economical. That's what I would like to add to it.
Thank you, Stefanie. Christina, it looked like you had a point to add.
Yeah, I actually participated in an online mock during COVID where it was entirely online. The attorneys put together videos. Everyone watched the videos on their own time, and then we watched the deliberations. And I think, and I understand you guys are developing a tool where you can actually watch the jurors deliberate. I think if you can do that, you lose very little doing it online. That I think was a concern I had, and as long as that's something you can do, I really don't see the difference. And it's so much cheaper. You don't have to fly anywhere. So.
Yeah, and that is one of the features of our Jury Confirm platform, which is the focus group platform, is actually listening into the jurors as they deliberate, which I think is, like I said, that's the real meat of the feedback that we get. For those that have observed the jurors deliberating in person versus online, did you feel like the nature and the quality of the deliberations was different? Meaning, do you see different interaction in person versus online? Collin?
I don't feel like I see any difference between the virtual and online versus live for deliberations. What I do like about the online, which Rachel, you did the first one with me, I guess, nearly 3 years ago, is the ability for me to email you or use the chat feature and have, clarifications posed almost in real time to the jurors, or pose a question to them after they've kind of gotten through a lot of the deliberation, and now we're just kind of throwing what ifs out there to see how they respond. I think it works a lot easier virtually than having to stop them. Maybe, you go in the room and it seems to throw the flow off, where I think virtually they take it almost in stride. It's almost like they are doing a Zoom or a Skype call, and they're right on it and get on it. And for how we're using it, that works very well. It allows me kind of to quickly have you bounce questions in or clarifications in and keep everything moving forward very fast. And I think that works well, especially when you're doing one or two discrete themes and you just need to test those. That works well for us.
And just if I can just add, post-COVID, with claims people who are not being able to travel, with people who want to be able to continue to be at their office, yet nevertheless monitor that mock trial. I mean, the ability, with both of your tools, for people to be in California, Texas, and somebody in Philadelphia presenting, and everybody speaking to each other, it's fabulous and it's flawless. And the fact that we can use video, the fact that we're able to give you the video and play it for those jurors while they're sitting there, that's just another step in the right direction. And I agree with the panelists. I think this is the new normal. As much as I have great doubts whether people are going to want to come into a jury room for the next year. I think juries are, if we see a jury before the middle of 2021, I'll be shocked. I don't know where they're coming from, but this gives us the ability to really look at it and keep people safe and give us real bird's eye view on what the cases are about. So it's the new normal, and I think you guys are out in front of it. And from the expense standpoint alone, flying, different levels of adjusters in, and claims professionals to see it and hear it, and it gets done efficiently. So yeah, it's great.
So there's a couple things, Ted, that you hit on there that I'd like to expand on with the group. You mentioned at the tail end the expense that's saved, and frankly the time of not having to have everybody travel to a given location. Oftentimes we're working in, rural counties in the middle of nowhere, and it's quite cumbersome to get there and get everything set up. For the claims folks on the panel, is this something that you consider when you're deciding between in-person versus virtual research? Is the cost difference between the two?
I think more than cost difference is my view, and I'm in a little bit of a different role in the claims department with the files I handle and advise on, but my view is time is money. And to have a claims examiner, out of the office for 3 days, basically flying to, rural Texas, sitting there for the next day doing the mocks and then flying back. 3 days is a long time for our examiners to be away from their desk with their claim count and everything that's going on. So, my view is if they can do it from their desk, or, when I do it, I usually come home, so I have a little more quiet and do them from home. But then back at the office the next day, there's a lot to be said for that. So I don't look at it so much from the cost in terms of the hard dollars. I try to quantify how much is 3 days being out of the office costing as well in terms of time and quality on their overall file. So I think that really helps. Plus, to Ted's point, you can have more people involved, right? I mean, if I'm doing it, my supervisor listens in from Houston. I'm sure she'll hate I said she was in Dallas. She's in Houston. I'm here in Richmond. My counsel's in Los Angeles. That way in real time, she and I can talk after the call and catch up on things. And there's no way I could fly 2 or 3 people in from the company to watch it in a lot of instances.
Collin,
Got it. Thanks.
I agree with you on that. I think it is more efficient to have it done virtually and to have the adjuster in the office watching it online as opposed to flying to the location. And from, a perspective right now where all companies are looking to save costs due to the economy, it makes sense at this time.
Christina, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I was just going to say that I have quite a few files now with adjusters from Lloyd's or people who are located in London. And this way they can participate and, watch basically real time. So yeah, that's also another added bonus.
I do think that's nice when you have people all over the country or internationally who can be in constant and instant communication with all of us during the focus group. As Collin mentioned, he might send me a chat message and that I see right away that says, hey, can you go move them along? We've heard enough about liability. Let's push them on to apportionment, or I want to hear what they have to say about damages. Your client from Lloyd's can send us that same chat message, whereas before they might have been watching a recording or waiting for the report, which would come later. So it allows us to have that instant communication. One of the other things that Ted kind of hit on and that I wanted to ask both Ted and Collin about is being the attorney presenter in person versus online. So Collin, you're in a unique position where you are on the claims end, but you've also been a presenter in these exercises. And I know both of you probably have some tips on ways that you might address mock jurors differently in the virtual setting versus in person. Collin, I'll start with you.
So in my experience doing it, where I have stepped into that role where I'm usually playing the policyholder counsel, I think, obviously there's no substitute for preparation, and I think you would do that both, whether it's live or virtual, although I suspect people can feel like, well, it's virtual, I don't need to kind of, get maybe quite as ready, but I do think it's important because they are going to see you, they're going to see you in a very tight window, and I think it's important to make sure your surroundings are right, so they're focused on that. I've had where I'm watching, the opposing counsel, who's obviously my counsel, but, I'm kind of looking at the window shade and why is he doing it from there and such. And I do think there's also, it's kind of like I've always heard about actors who are on stage, they need to really kind of go over the top with their presentation because to the audience, it feels normal. And I think that's probably true more in virtual than you would certainly do in live, because if they're sitting right there, 5 feet away from you, 6 feet away from you, they can pick up on those nuances like Ted was talking about, that interaction. It's harder when it's virtual. And so I do think you need to be a little bit more animated and understand the dynamic of what it looks like on camera so that you can try to bring a little bit of that in that you would have in an opening or a closing if you are live. And so that takes a little practice and a little thought about how you're going to do it. Clearly, like in any instance, you really need to be comfortable with the exhibits and know how you're going to talk to them about that, because you do have a limited window when you're doing it. And so I really tried to put in a lot of extra preparation on things like that, working with you all, making sure the PowerPoints are right, because that is certainly not my strong suit, to monkey around with PowerPoints and try to convert a PDF into a PowerPoint and then call out something. I could only mess that up. So, you're going to spend the money, whether it's the live or online, you want to get the best result out of it. So, I really advocate, from my counsel, and I certainly try to do it, to really work with you all to understand. And then I listen to the jurors about that. If, is there something I would have done differently? Because a lot of times they'll focus on the presentation as much as the substance. I mean, I've had them say, and I'm sure, all of us on the panel have heard this, he didn't seem very prepared, or he looked like he was fumbling through the exhibits. I've done live ones where they focused on how the lawyer was dressed, and, it's oddly, but we all know that can skew something. So you really do have to kind of think this through. And I think you should try to make it like it's a real trial. I mean, I've had my counsel show up and not be dressed, in my view, appropriately with a jacket and tie on. And I think, I wonder what jurors think about that you're not really treating it like it's a real jury. And so I try to push mine to do that as well.
I think that's great advice, Ted. Before I come on you, I just want to underscore Collin's point of treating a virtual mock just like you would a traditional mock, which is hopefully just like you would treat an actual trial jury, meaning even though you're talking into a webcam instead of to a room of 30 people, you still want to have that level of engagement, enthusiasm, getting at the sympathy factor if you're playing the role of plaintiff, and having a polished and professional presentation, because jurors in these settings do take the session very seriously. To them, the way we at Magna set it up for our mock jurors is that this is a form of ADR, that they're participating in a kind of alternative dispute resolution, and we don't tell them that their decision is going to be legally binding, but they think that it's going to really help the parties resolve the case, which is true at least on one side of the case. So they're taking it very seriously, and they respond well when the presenters have also given it that level of preparation. Ted, I'll turn to you. Any advice or tips for presenting in the virtual environment?
Collin just read the whole script, so I don't know what more I'm going to say I could add. But no, and I just want to reemphasize that, all of us that try cases understand it's about practice and it's about preparation. And a virtual presentation is no different in those respects. In some respects, it's even harder. I mean, before I go and do a jury confirm or jury evaluator with Magna, I'm practicing with a video camera in my office, and then I'm playing it back to see how I look on that camera, because you are limited in the dimension of the camera as opposed to being in, with a live mock trial where you can walk around and use some body English and convey some things that you don't get to do on a virtual. So very important to know your script, very important to make sure that your exhibits flow well within your within your presentation and to make sure they look good. One of the things that I want to do, and I'm sold on Magna, you guys do my exhibits as well, is I want to test my exhibits out during that presentation. I want to see if my exhibits are selling. Are they clear? Does the jury get them? Is it resonating with them? So there's so many things that you can do with a virtual that you can do in person, but it takes preparation. And one of the things that Collin said that I oftentimes that people don't get is it's very important for the defense lawyer to take the position of a plaintiff's attorney in a mock trial. It is harder. You have to work twice as hard when you're preparing for a mock trial, virtual or in person, and you take your role. Well, you're saying to yourself, well, I've done my job. I don't have to do that much trial prep. But to really understand your opponent's case and to really understand whether your defense is going to sell, to get into that role of the plaintiff's lawyer, and to take that position and see if you could punch holes in your own theory. Again, I keep going back to this one theme of don't believe your own BS. And that's what these things allow you to do. They allow you to pull your case apart and see what is selling or what's really just selling to you. And that's, to me, the importance. But practice is critical, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. And even though with virtual, you're reading a script, and I think sometimes people say, well, I'm going to read it and just look into the camera, and they feel like they need less preparation. The opposite is true. You need to do that over and over again so the cadence is right, the delivery is right, the emphasis on the important things, and the pauses to allow someone to hear what you say and then consider it and then move to your next topic. So it's all about preparation. Everything that we do is about preparation.
Well, especially when you can't play off the live jury, like you were saying earlier, Ted. I think that's exactly right. It is a little awkward when you're by yourself in a room, delivering it into the camera, and you can't see the jurors, or and kind of look at their body language, look at their faces. So it does take practice. Like you, I usually before the big day, I bring 6 or 7 examiners into a conference room and deliver my presentation and ask for their feedback and walk them through the exhibits, because I do think it is a lot harder to get that cadence right, the tone right, when you can't see the jurors, and you can fall into this kind of more monotone reading it through. And I think you just lose a little bit, and you're not really trying to build that rapport. And I do think you can build a rapport through the camera, and they can kind of get a feel for you, but it does take practice, and you need to put some effort into that or it falls flat. And Rachel would know better, but that's my feeling.
No, absolutely. I think that's spot on. And that certainly is the main difference between being in person and online, is that you're not staring at all of these people in a room in front of you. And so some of the questions that we get from clients who are considering virtual research are, well, won't I lose that feedback that I typically as an attorney presenter look for when I'm giving a presentation to an audience? Meaning if I'm in a courtroom, I'm looking at the jury box to sort of gauge their reactions. And one of the ways that we have tried to actually capture what we think is more reliable data on that is through this artificial intelligence that we've built into the jury confirmed platform. So while you're not necessarily gauging their facial reactions, which actually psychology tells us are not very reliable, that's a whole other topic, but the jurors are telling us specifically with their, we call them rating meters, how helpful, how persuasive is this? In other words, do you like this? Are you giving Collin or Ted a big thumbs up, or are you giving them a thumbs down in this moment? Is this not helpful, not persuasive? So rather than relying on you guys to read the room and get a sense of, the woman in the second row, third in, she was with me, she loved it, we're actually getting reliable data from them on, do you like it, do you not, which our system captures through this artificial intelligence and catalogs. So all of that information is displayed for everyone instantaneously during the session that we can see. And then also later we go back and look, what were my highest rated points, my lowest rated points? And the jury confirmed platform has been designed to automatically catalog that information, which I think is very helpful data to actually have, rather than trying to remember, what were the facial expressions or the reactions that I got in the room in that moment. The system will tell you, here were the reactions that you got. We had a couple questions from our attendees that I wanted to address. I think they're great questions. And actually, we had two comments that you can also take advantage of virtual jury research for training adjusters that, for example, you would not normally have the time or budget to send to an in-person mock trial. They can easily log on to a virtual mock trial, observe, and kind of learn what it's all about, what type of feedback that you get. And they can do that at their own convenience. They can log on for an hour or 2 hours, and they don't have to travel. So I think that's a great point. Thank you to some of our attendees who pointed that out to us. The other question that we got is about the jurors. And one issue is is there a concern that virtual mock jurors will not be representative of live jurors when we actually go back to live jury trials? And the sort of related question is, what do we expect juries to look like post-COVID? Ted, this is one of the points you alluded to, that who's going to be comfortable coming into a courthouse, serving on a jury, and how does that affect verdicts? So I'll be really curious to hear from you all if you have theories, if you have thoughts on how what the post-COVID environment is going to look like in the courtroom and how that might affect verdicts. We've been doing some research on our end. I'll just start this off. We've been doing some survey research of jurors around the country, asking them questions about how COVID has affected opinions of insurance companies and of litigants, but also asking, are you comfortable if you got a jury summons today going into a courthouse within the next few weeks, and why or why not? And we're cataloging the types of people that say yes or no, I am comfortable or I'm not. There is a theory that post-COVID, at least immediately, or rather I should say during COVID, juries may be more defense-oriented because the people that actually are willing to come in and show up perhaps are less risk-averse, or they're more tolerant of risk, which can be a hallmark of a defense juror. They also tend to be, generalizing, more politically conservative than others who say, I'm not willing to risk it to come and serve on jury duty. We know that politically conservative people, on the whole, tend to be more defense-oriented. So that's one of the current theories that's been floated. The opposite theory is that when people experience trauma, loss, hardship, that they more closely align with plaintiffs who are alleging harm and loss, and that can make a person more plaintiff-oriented. So differing theories out there, and it remains to be seen how it's going to play out. Christina, I saw that you took your line off of mute, so I'm curious, do you have thoughts on what juries will look like once courts open back up?
Only because of this very recent online mock that I did, where there were so many furloughed professionals. Like, we had a ton of accountants. There were so many accountants on these juries. And so I think that's interesting. And, I don't know, hopefully things are getting back to normal and maybe these people will go back to work and stuff, but maybe we're going to see people more willing to actually serve. I know I put off my jury duty 100 times because I had work and, work travel and stuff. So maybe people don't, I don't know. That's my thought.
Thanks, Christina. Anyone else have thoughts, or have you read anything about juries post-COVID? Ted?
Yeah, I've held this theory for, I guess, a couple weeks into COVID, and I've had colleagues tell me that I'm wrong, and I've had colleagues tell me I'm right. I wonder whether we're going to see some social deflation. I wonder, with 20 million people out of work and people understanding how precious it is to have a job, whether smashing a company with large verdicts and punitive damages, whether there won't be some hesitation about that when you're a good corporate citizen. But I've had people tell me the opposite, and defense lawyers and claims professionals say, no, that people are going to say, you know what, I know what it is to be down, I know what it is to be out, and these people should really pay for the damages in a big way that they caused this person. So I don't have an answer. I think we're all trying to figure that out. I agree with what was said about, I think jury pools are potentially either going to be smaller, they could be more diverse. I worry about people who are saying, you know what, I can't afford to come in for jury duty because I just got back my job, and I don't want to lose, and I'm just beginning to get money back in my bank account, or I'm too busy to sit for jury duty because I'm doing interviews. And does that skew our pool? And I think with this one, none of us have a great crystal ball. I think it's going to be something that we're going to be able to look in the past, backwards in a year or two and see what happens if we even have jury trials. I'm not convinced of that. I really think I practice primarily in Philadelphia. I have no idea how they're going to squeeze 300 or 400 people in that jury room and then make them sit shoulder to shoulder in a courtroom during voir dire with 40 or 50 or 60 people in a courtroom. I think people are going to go, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I think the plaintiffs bar, from the folks that I'm talking to, they're very nervous about it. I mean, they're saying, you know what, there's no real pressure on the insurance companies to move these cases forward. There's going to be no jury trial. So it's a very interesting question. I don't know how. I think we're all looking at a crystal ball, but hopefully collectively there's a lot of people making a lot of good sense, and we'll figure it out. But man, it's a crapshoot. I don't know the answer. I'm just riffing like everybody else is, I guess.
I think some of it's going to be geographic, right? I mean, I think New England, New York is going to be a lot slower. I mean, my impression has been Virginia, despite our quarantine order, really never kind of shut down. People were out and about this entire time. The courts have already reopened here for live in-person hearings and such. What I'm hearing in South Florida is they really kind of kept going a lot of ways. So I think it's going to be based somewhat on geography. If people really didn't feel like it was, they really weren't restricted. The hospitals weren't in trouble in their area. They were out and about at Home Depot and Walmart and doing their, daily life, other than being a little more cautious and maybe wearing a mask. They're probably not going to be nearly as worried, and they're going to kind of feel like it was a blip. I think places like New York are going to be very different, where, obviously their situation was very different, and I suspect they're going to take it much more slowly. So I suspect geography may have some play in that a little bit.
I don't think we're only dealing with COVID. I think that it's unknown right now because we're also dealing with a tumultuous political environment. So I don't know if that's going to have an effect on this as well. But I mean, that's now that may have an impact as well on people's opinions. I just wanted to throw that in the mix.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Stefanie, that the COVID, the political and social environment are all going to affect people's willingness to show up and also their propensity to find for a plaintiff and to award damages. Some of your thoughts here have been reiterated by some of our attendees. We had a comment from one who says family and friends have expressed concerns about sitting in a courtroom in close confines with unknown people. So there's more comfort, for example, gathering with your own family and friends who have been quarantining, haven't been sick, than going into a courtroom. We may see hybrids. I've heard courts considering virtual jury selection. So when you have huge groups of people, you don't want to gather that many, do a jury selection online and then actually call the seated folks into court to do a socially distanced trial. I definitely think there will be a lot of differences based on geography. As Collin said, one person asked, our jury pool is going to have less elderly jurors due to the high risk potential. I mean, there are definitely certain types of people who will likely request to defer jury duty. And so what we will be keeping a close eye on the jury consulting industry is, well, who are those types of people and how does that affect the makeup of our juries and ultimately verdict orientation. I think Ted's right. It's going to be a case-by-case thing. There will probably be some halo effect for certain types of defendants who have gotten some goodwill during the crisis, both COVID and also politically, as Stefanie mentioned, but there also might be some backlash against certain types of defendants. So it will all be very interesting to see as things move forward. To address the particular question about will the types of jurors that we're getting in the virtual research reflect who we actually see on the jury panels, the only thing that we can do on Magna is, like I said, take a lot of strides and a lot of steps to ensure that we are getting you a wide variety of people, all different backgrounds, all different types, and we're continuing to collect that data on who's more or less likely to show up for jury duty in the near future, so that maybe we consider, do we want to start screening some of those folks out of our mock juries, or do we at least understand this type of person participated in the mock, they might not actually show up for trial. Does that help our chances? Does that hurt our chances at trial? And that's all information that we'll be able to answer with the data that we are collecting in these virtual studies. So my final question before I turn it back over to Peter is, do we think virtual research will stick? Meaning, it's stuck here at Magna for over a decade. All of you have been using this pre-COVID, and I know we'll continue to use it post-COVID. Do you think, what's the word on the street from colleagues that are perhaps new to virtual research? Are they going to continue using it post-COVID? Is it here to stay?
Yes. I mean, I think absolutely yes, because the cost-benefit analysis just plays in favor of doing it, and the ability to get that. Or if you use it early and you're using it in a certain way, it was frankly to me a no-brainer before COVID, so it's not any different now, and my reasoning wouldn't change, going forward. I'm using it in a particular way to get what I need to test those discrete issues. And so it makes a lot of sense the way we're using it. So I think it's not only here to stay, but I think as more people now are comfortable with this online technology from all different ways, Zoom, Skype, whatever. I can't figure out Microsoft Teams yet. It's befuddled me, but every other way seems to be people are getting more and more comfortable with it. I mean, I hear people say, I'm never going to a grocery store again. I'm using Instacart to deliver it for the rest of my life and stuff. I just think people are, once you get a comfort level with it and you feel it works for you, why would you now tinker with it again?
Awesome. Appreciate that vote of confidence from Collin. Thumbs up or thumbs down from the rest of our panelists. Is virtual jury research here to stay?
I'm going
to thumbs up from Christina. Stefanie says yes. Ted's putting on his mask to compete with Peter back at our office. So Peter, to wrap us up, I'm going to turn it back over to you and the crew with masks there.
I just took my mask off. Don't shoot me. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic webinar facilitated by Dr. Colangelo, our Managing Director of Jury Research. Fantastic vision. It's real. And I say it's real as in that is Ted Schaer over my right shoulder. From Chop for Chop, three-time champion, wins all the big trials. You don't want to miss him. And that's the Magna game over my left shoulder, the Magna gang over my left shoulder. We're back in action. We're here in the city of brotherly love. Magna Legal Services, bricks and mortar, is officially open for business. Now, somebody said, hey, what does this stuff cost? Okay, let me give you some ideas. Jury Evaluator and Jury Confirm are our two premier patented and patent-pending virtual jury research tools. The price range can be anywhere from $12,000 to typically about $25,000. Generally, when you're doing the online focus groups and you want to add more and more deliberation groups to the program, Rachel's going to assign more and more jury consultants to monitor that, and that will drive up the costs. You can go up to 6 separate groups of jurors deliberating simultaneously, real-time, live, and so that'll drive up some of the costs. But anywhere typically between $12,000 to $14,000. But let's say you want to get a specific price. What are you going to do? You're going to call us at 866-624-6221. Ask for me. Ask for Dr. Colangelo. Ask for your local account representative. Give us a call. We want to work with you. I want to thank you, Ms. Perrotta, hailing from Brooklyn, Mr. Hite from Virginia, Ted Schaer here in my office and there in your home, and from the Lone Star State, Stefanie Milch. Everything you heard here today are the opinions solely expressed by the individuals. Doesn't represent their companies, except for me. Everything I say is Magna. Thank you, and we'll see you next week on our next webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Stay safe out there.